Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, Everlynn's Books and Tea. You can probably tell by the title of this video as well as what you're seeing on screen right now what today's video is going to be about, and that is updating my 2025 reading journal, specifically the monthly reading spreads for January, February, and March. The pictures in this journal are from the same Etsy shop that I got my previous pictures on my yearly reading challenge spreads, and that is the Eternal Tale Pages shop on Etsy. And this particular set that I'm using for the monthly reading spreads is the Mystic Fireflies set. I'll link the shop in the description below. So for the first half of my journal, when I was doing the yearly reading challenges, I focused more on the dark blues and kind of like a dark academia vibe. For the monthly reading spreads, we're using more of a fantasy type picture with more pinks and purples and oranges, just to kind of let the two areas be a little bit more distinctive from each other. All right, I think that's all I have for this page. Let's go ahead and turn the page and we will get started on finishing up our January spreads first. All right, here are our January spreads. On the left side, you can see I printed out a calendar. So not sure what I'm going to do at this point in time, but hopefully by the next time I update the monthly reading spread, I will have a little bit more information on that. Then on the right side, we are going to be doing the stats for the month of January. And I just chose some very basic stats. So first off, I made this table in Excel looking at a couple of different things. The number of books I completed this month, which was 7, so not too bad. And the number of pages read, which were 2,500 almost, so a good amount. Though I'm pretty sure out of the first 3 months of the year, this is the month that I read the least amount of. Some other stats on here are my average ratings for the month of January, which was 3.8, and then the average days to complete, which was 7 days. And you may be thinking, if every book took you 7 days, how did you read 7 books? Because that, adds up to 49 days. I always read 2 books at once, one Kindle book and one physical book at the same time. So that's how I got the average days to complete being 7. Then I made 2 pie charts, one focusing on the genre of the books I read, the other focusing on the author status. For the genre side of things, my most popular genre for the month of January was mystery. I read 3 books out of that, which is kind of crazy. I thought it would be fantasy, but I guess being in the middle of winter, mystery is one of those genres that goes well with winter. I then read 2 fantasy books and then 1 each of romance and historical books. For the author status, I read 4 books by authors that I've never read from before. I read 2 debut novels from authors, and then I read 1 book from an author that I had read from previously. So I definitely enjoy how these little pie charts look on here, and it just gives a very quick glance of how this month overall went. The next thing I wanted to add on here were the countries that the books I read were set in. I thought that would be just something fun to keep track of in the reading journal. So the way I did this is I ended up going on Canva and finding outlines of each country, changing the color, and then I wrote how many books from that country I read. The United Kingdom was a country I read the most books from this month. It was 3, which is not unsurprising because I do read a lot of books set in either England or Scotland. Not so much Wales yet. I need to look for some more books set in Wales. Then was the US. I read 2 books, I believe, that were set in the US, and then 1 each in Ireland and in Iceland. Iceland you'll probably be seeing a lot throughout the year because I do have a series that is set in Iceland. It's a detective series. And it's, I think, about 7 books long in the series, and I'm on book 3 or 4. So that country will definitely be coming up a lot throughout the course of the year. So there we have it. That is our stats page. I really liked how it turned out. I like how the colors kind of coordinated, and I'm very happy with that page. Next up is the challenges page. So on this page, I have a lot of different challenges that I am trying to read throughout the year, from Fantasy Bingo to Adventures of Eldia, and On this page, I wanted to see how many books I read that completed these challenges. And for the month of January, I was able to complete 14 prompts from the yearly challenges, which I felt was pretty good, especially only having read 7 books. That meant that on average, each book fit 2 prompts. Though in reality, as you will see, there was one book that actually got me like 7 prompts. And that book is that first one I am gluing in, The Peculiar Garden of Harriet Hunt. And if you've watched some of my videos before, you know this was not my favorite book, but boy, did it fulfill a ton of prompts for the month of January. So you can see that it fulfilled character's name in the title. It was published in 2024. It was a cozy fantasy book. It had a green cover. It had a alliterative title. So there's 2 more that are coming as well. So definitely a successful book from that standpoint. The Glass Woman also fulfilled several prompts. That was the one that was set in Iceland, which was a place I've never been, so I gotta throw it in for that prompt, as well as being set in a country that had an active volcano. I actually watch a YouTube channel, I forget what it's called, but it's one of those channels that there's just a video camera that records in a set place, and this one happened to be set in Iceland where the volcano is, so you can kind of watch the lava flow from that volcano. Ghost of Harvard ended up being a read not off my TBR but off of a winter reading game, and the character happened to have red hair, so I was quite pleased that I was able to get one of my 52 books and 52 weeks prompts out of the way. And then Pumpkin Prejudice was another one from my reading game that I was able to get a 52 books and 52 week prompt out of the way. And then the guest list was my first book I read from my 25 books reading 2025 list. So I was very pleased that on the very first month of the year, I was checking off one of those books. So on this monthly reading spread, I wanted to put down my monthly TBR game and which books got chosen, so I could see how successful I was doing throughout the year. So after trying to figure out how I was going to do this, I felt that the best way was to first of all use these cute little teacups to represent the jar pulls. So in my TBR game, I have 4 jars. I have a series jar, a science fiction fantasy award-winning / nominee jar, a yearly TBR jar, which is my 25 books to read in 2025, as well as a new release jar. So these teacups will correspond to each of those jars. And then for the prompt cards, I chose to use a circle so I can put a book on either side of the circle, because each prompt card for my game, I choose 2 books, one a physical book, one a electronic book, and I only have to read one of the 2 books to complete the prompt. And the way you will be able to tell which books I read is that the books that I did read are going to be printed out in color, and the books that I did not read will be black and white. So The Glass Woman, I completed, while The Girl in the Tower, I did not. So I felt like this was also a good place to kind of talk about the books I read each month on my TBR, since I don't do a monthly recap. So I'm just going to give quick descriptions on the books I read and what I felt about them. We'll start with The Glass Woman. The Glass Woman is a historical mystery that was set in Iceland, almost kind of like a thriller book. And it follows a woman who married a man that she had literally just met, and she had to move from her home village to his village, which happened to be in a very remote spot of Iceland. When she got there, she comes to find out that his former wife had disappeared under mysterious circumstances, and the villagers don't really want to interact with her because they are kind of scared about her new husband. So then one day she starts hearing noises coming from the attic above her, and she's not allowed up in this attic, and she does not know why. She ends up talking to some villagers who start to tell her a little bit more about her husband's former wife, and the mystery starts to unravel from there. I enjoyed the setting of this book. It was definitely a dark, eerie setting, and I enjoyed the characters as well. It's definitely a slow-moving book, though, so if you need more action in your mystery thrillers, this may not be for you. But overall, it was interesting to read and kind of see what village life was like in, I believe it was like the 1400s in Iceland. Next up is The Guest List, which is on the bottom left. This is a book by Lucy Foley that was actually my first 25 books to read in 2025 read for the year. So this is a mystery book that is set on a remote island off the coast of Ireland, and the book is set at this kind of like hotel mansion where a wedding is about to take place and someone ends up dead at the wedding. And being a remote place, all that is very difficult to get to, all the suspects happen to be in one place now. So it kind of gives you the vibe of And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, which was also set in a remote place. Overall, I wasn't too impressed by the book. I think I ended up giving it a 3.5. I didn't really feel attached to any of the characters, and I wasn't in awe over the revelation of who the murderer was. I own a couple of other Lucy Foley books, so I definitely want to read some more books by her again, just to see if this book just didn't happen to be one that I enjoyed, and I might enjoy some of her others. I know some books by her people enjoy more than others, so definitely going to check out a couple of others and see how I feel about her as an author. The third book I read was an Agatha Christie book called The Murder at the Vicarage, which was the first book in her Miss Marple series. I've read a bunch of Agatha Christie books, but I never actually read one of her Miss Marple series, so I was interested to see how that went. And I ended up enjoying it. I definitely like Miss Marple as a character. I was surprised that the book was not told from her viewpoint and that she was kind of more of a side character, but I enjoyed the little revelations that she made throughout the story and how the other characters kind of interacted with those revelations, and kind of seeing how the other characters thought about Miss Marple as well. I enjoyed the mystery. I never guessed the killer in Agatha Christie books, so I wasn't surprised when I didn't guess this one either, but I did enjoy how it ended. Next up, I read Sleep Like Death, which is a Snow White fairy tale retelling, and it's a YA fantasy novel. And overall, I definitely enjoyed it. It's one of those books that is just fun to read and keeps you distracted. I didn't have any trouble getting through it. So in this book, Eve is the main character, and she grew up with two mothers, one of which was cursed by the night and trapped in the body of a songbird. And now she wants to seek out the night and kill him because he's the one that did it to her mom. Eve happens to have very unique abilities, including the ability to communicate with animals and conjure weapons from nature, and she feels that this is enough to allow her to kill the night, which no one else can. But then her other mother starts acting strangely, and she starts to wonder if she actually has enough power to kill the night. I enjoyed the character of Eve, and I enjoyed how the author kind of slowly gave revelations throughout the book. They weren't so spread out that you kind of lost interest in what was going on in the plot. There was enough secrets that got laid out in front of you throughout the story that kept your attention. I definitely want to read the other fairy tale retelling, which is Cinderella is Dead, and because I really enjoyed this one, so I'm definitely looking forward to reading the next one. And also, Sleep Like Death was also a Locus Award nominee for Young Adult, which I am not surprised about because I definitely felt like it was a really well-written book. And then the last book I read for January was, technically it was the first book, was The Peculiar Garden of Harriet Hunt, which was not my favorite book. I was definitely looking forward to reading this book, which is why it was in my new release jar, because I only choose the books that I am interested in the plot in for that jar, and I was definitely interested in the plot. The problem was the execution, I would say. So the basic plot follows Harriet Hunt, who grew up in a house in the 1800s England, and her mother mysteriously disappeared when Harriet Hunt was pretty young, so she grew up under her father's watch, who did not allow her any freedom, basically. She didn't really ever leave the house. She was mostly stuck in her room, and not a very happy childhood. But Harriet Hunt did have one magical power, and that was the ability to manipulate plants. She could make them grow. She could kind of make them do what she wanted to. They listened to her. One day, her dad Also, one day when she was a young adult, her dad also ended up disappearing, and now she's living in this house alone with freedom for the first time. Until she ends up meeting this guy who starts to court her, and she starts finding out things about her family that she did not know before. So the premise of the book was interesting. I liked the magic surrounding the plants. I liked the kind of mystery that was going on, but I just did not really enjoy reading it. So Harriet Hunt was very naive throughout this book, and she made a lot of mistakes that led to things happening to her. And it was very difficult to really connect with her character because of how naive she was. I also wish that there was more history surrounding how she got the magic that she had with the plants. It was almost like an afterthought. Her magic with the plants was there, but it didn't really play like a huge part to the book. It definitely played some part, but I felt like more could have been done with that as well. I think this was the second book by the author, so I'm interested to see if she continues to grow as a writer. So I may check out another one of her books if she publishes a third book, because like I said, I thought the plot idea was good. I just felt like the execution could have been stronger. But those are the books that I read in January. I only completed 5 out of the 9 prompts, so not off to a great start at the beginning of the year. So now we move on to February. So February, obviously the shortest month of the year. So first off, we're going to take a look at our stats. So we actually read one more book than we did in January, even though February is only 28 days long. We still managed to read 8 books, and 2,700 pages were read this month. It definitely didn't take us as long to read the books. We were at about 6.4 days to complete a book, and our average rating was a little bit better in January with an average rating of 4.1. Probably why I read the books a little bit faster. I enjoy them a little bit more. So romance was our most popular genre this month. Not surprising, being February. I did play a romance game in February where I read only romance books, so that's those 3 right there. I also read 2 mystery books and then 1 each of horror, fantasy, and dystopian. And then looking at the author pie chart, I ended up reading 5 books by authors I've never read from before, 2 books by authors that were new to me, and then 1 book was a debut novel by an author. And then looking at the countries, I read books set in 5 different countries, which were Norway, the United States, the United Kingdom again, and then Italy and India as well. So we brought in our book settings a little bit more this month as well. Then comes our challenges page. You can see that we did really good in February. We completed 18 prompts for our yearly reading challenges, which is crazy. So we were lucky that our books fit so many of these prompts. We fulfilled several 52 books in 52 week prompts. I think there was like a total of 7 of those prompts. We read another 25 books in 2025. So that's 2 out of the 25 that we read through February. Becoming Leda was a book that fit among the most prompts. It fit 3 prompts for this month. Reddit bingo prompt, a library thing bingo prompt, as well as a 52 books in 52 weeks prompt. It did feature a birth, which I thought was going to be a harder prompt to fulfill, but in the very first chapters of this book, there was a birth of what would become one of the main characters, Leda. Every time I go on vacation, someone dies was definitely a fun book to read as well. And if you're looking for a fun book that breaks the 4th wall for the 52 books and 52 week prompts, this is definitely one of those that I had a lot of fun reading. And definitely breaks the 4th wall. No questions about that. A Language of Dragons, which was published earlier this year, also fulfilled several prompts on here. And surprisingly, A Death in Kashmir did too. This is an older book. I think it was published in the 1950s, set in the 1940s, and fulfilled three of our prompts. The Hunger Games and Vintage kind of rounded out the rest of the books. So overall, I was very happy about how many prompts were fulfilled by reading these books in February. All right, so next up is our February TBR game. And it is time to see how we did in February and to recap the books that we did read in February. So we had a total of 8 prompts. We had 4 jar pulls, one from each jar, surprisingly, as well as 4 prompts to play in this game. All right, so you can see we read a lot of books off of our TBR game in February. Vintage, which is under the Science Fiction Fantasy Award-winning jar, we actually did read as well. I know the cover looks black and white, but that's because the cover is black and white, but we did read that book. So starting off with The Hunger Games, there's not much to say about it other than it's a fantastic book. It's one of my 5-star reads. I'm so happy to be doing a reread of it this year. I last read it when the books first came out. So it's been a minute, and I am enjoying them just as much as I did the first time around. Vintage, under the Science Fiction Fantasy Award-winning jar, was definitely an interesting book. The book takes place at the end of the 20th century. I can't remember if it was the 1980s or 1990s, but it follows a main character who is never named, who is a teenage boy. He has just gotten kicked out of his parents' house because they found out he was gay, and he ends up moving in with his aunt into this small town. One day when he is walking back to his aunt's house, he ends up walking down a road that is famous in this town for being haunted by a ghost. The ghost is a high school boy who was killed by a car on his way home from some sort of either like a high school football game or homecoming, something. I don't remember exactly what. But ever since then, he haunts this road and doesn't realize that he has died. So, of course, the main character ends up running into this ghost. The ghost kind of befriends him, and then one thing happens after another, and now the main character has to figure out how to keep this ghost away from him. I don't read a lot of horror books, so I don't know if this was unique or not. The plot felt very unique to me. It could just be because I don't read horror books, but I enjoyed reading it. It was a nominee for the Nebula Young Adult Award, so it's also well written, definitely kept my attention, and was just kind of like a unique spin on a ghost story, I feel. So definitely happy that I had a chance to read this, because before I made my Science Fiction Fantasy Award winning nominee jar, probably never would have heard of this book. Next up is The Sea of Stone, which is one of our series jar pulls. And this book is that detective series that I said in Iceland that I mentioned earlier. It follows a detective who was born in Iceland, moved to the US when he was younger, became a detective in Boston. Then he got on the bad side of a gang that he testified against. So the gang kind of sent out people to kill him. So he gets sent to Iceland to kind of be a liaison for the Icelandic police and also for his own safety. So each book follows a crime that has to be solved. A violent crime usually, which is what he is kind of the liaison for, to kind of train the Icelandic police officers on how to solve violent crimes. But he also has his own crime that he's kind of researching himself, and that is his father was murdered in Boston, and he is trying to figure out who the killer was because that was never solved. I like how the books are all interconnected by trying to solve his father's murder, but then each book also focuses on a specific crime as well. So definitely enjoying the story. Looking forward to reading the next book. And then our next book is A Language of Dragons, which I chose for a 5-star prediction. And I don't know if I would say it was 5 stars. It was definitely somewhere between 4 to 4.5 stars. It's a fantasy book it's a historical fantasy book set at the time of World War II in England at Bletchley Park. And if you have seen videos by me before, you know how much I love reading books that are set in Bletchley Park. And this one just had a unique spin because it was set during the times of World War II, but in this fantasy world, there was also dragons that were fighting in World War II. So the main character is, I think, high school age. She's about to go off to college to study dragon languages that she's already pretty proficient in. And then her parents are arrested, and Viv gets a chance to go to Bletchley Park to become a code breaker, and she does well there. Authorities have promised to release her parents. And what they want her to do is to code break a dragon language. So the action in this book was kind of on and off. I would say the middle of the book was definitely a little bit slower than the beginning and the end. The beginning kind of threw you right into the story, and then the end kind of wrapped everything up, but there wasn't a lot that was going on in certain sections in the middle. There was a small underlying romance, but other than that, there wasn't too much happening, which made it a little bit more difficult to get through that middle section of the book. Overall, I did end up enjoying it though. I did enjoy the character, Viv, and how determined she was. And I liked how the author introduced dragons into the war and kind of reimagined World War II through a dragon aspect. Next up is Death in Kashmir by MMK. I don't really have much to say about this book. It's a Agatha Christie style mystery book, a whodunit novel. The main character is on vacation in Kashmir when one of the people she is traveling with ends up dying, and it ends up that she's murdered, and now the main character is trying to figure out who murdered her friend because that murderer now seems to be after her. So it was just a fun whodunit. This book is part of a 5-book series, but each book is a standalone, and each book takes place in a different city around the world. So definitely going to read the rest of them. Enjoy the writing, but it's nothing that like super stands out or not. It's just kind of like one of those classic mystery books. The 7-Year Slip was the second book I read this year off of my 25 books in 2025 list. I put it on that list because I have not read it, and obviously so many people say great things about it. I ended up enjoying it. The beginning was a little slow for me, but once I got to kind of where the plot really starts up, I ended up finishing it very quickly and really enjoyed the characters. I felt like the author did a great job with dealing with 2 different timelines, and I really love the book. I love the 2 characters and how they kind of changed throughout the story, and definitely want to pick up another book by her as well. For those who haven't read it, which I feel is few and far between, the book follows the main character, Clementine, I believe, who moves into an apartment that was owned by her aunt, and that this apartment has kind of like a special thing about it where it can send people 7 years into the past. So kind of like a unique romantic contemporary romance book. And then the next up we have Every Time Someone Goes on Vacation, Someone Dies. This is just a fun book that does not take itself seriously. It follows the main character, who is a writer who's on her new release tour in the Amalfi Coast, in the Amalfi Coast in Italy. And one of the characters that she wrote in her book happens to be inspired by her ex-boyfriend, who's kind of like a criminal, and during the tour, he's invited on the tour because he gets money from her for making this character after him, and he meets her on tour, and he is convinced that someone is trying to kill him. So the book is trying to figure out if someone's really killing him or not. It's just, like I said, it's a fun book. It breaks the fourth wall a ton. And it's just one of those books that is good for vacation when you just want a distraction sitting, by the pool or on the beach or whatnot. That is Every Time Someone Goes on Vacation, Someone Dies. And then last up, we have The Darkness Within Us, which is a book I absolutely loved. It's a YA fantasy novel. So it's a enemies to lover romance that follows the main character, Chrysanthi. It's actually the second book in the Shadows Between Us, but definitely can be read as a standalone because that is what I did. I'm not sure how much it spoils the first book in the series, but I will let you know once I read that series, or the first book. I got the first book edition from FairyLoo, so I think it comes sometime this summer. Anyway, this book follows Chrysanthi, who has throughout her life been hiding her intelligence and her ambition because she wants just to become a wealthy duchess living on her own. So she ends up marrying a wealthy duke who she takes care of, who is at the end of his life. And when he dies, she ends up inheriting his money, his house, etc. And so now she can be independent. She doesn't have to marry anyone again. So she is thrilled by this. But it turns out that a man comes claiming that he is the Duke's son. And if that is true, then he actually owns the manor, the money, and all that. So now she has to figure out if this is true or not. And I just love the dynamic between the main character and the Duke's estranged grandson. And that is kind of what the book follows. It's just another fun read. I love enemies to lover books, and I really enjoyed this one. All right, moving on to March. So first up is our March stats. We actually read the most books in March out of any of the months, and that was 9 books for almost 3,200 pages. It took us again about 7 days to complete each book, and our average rating was the same as February, which was 4.1. This month we did read fantasy the most, followed by mystery, and then one each of the remaining genres: nonfiction, dystopian, and historical. For our author status books, we did read 5 books by authors that were new to me, 2 by authors we read before, and then 2 books that were debut novels by their respective authors. And then for our countries, because we read so many fantasy books, we only read books set in 3 different countries, and they were the United States, Ghana, and Iceland. We also didn't do so well on fulfilling any yearly challenge prompts this month. We only fulfilled 6 despite reading 9 books. And we did not fulfill any of our 25 books in 2025 either. So we did do our cover color being pink with Under the Never Sky. We did The Darkness Within Us, which, yes, you saw on my February TBR, but I technically read most of it in the beginning of March. But it was a book with a sprayed edge because it's a Fairy Loot edition. We read Lament for our adventures in Eldia, where we had to read a book with a pointy weapon on the cover. We read Wayward for magical realism, The Awakening of Ren Crown for our pretty book cover, and then Sea of Stone for a author that shares a relative's first or last name. Again, another one that was technically on my February TBR, but I read the majority of it in the beginning of March. And those were our challenges. So we didn't do a great job. For those who watched my March TBR, you may remember this as the month that the game was very, very mean to me. We ended up getting, I think, like 14 books that month, which we did not read all of them at all. So starting off, this is going to be a 2-page spread, or 4-page spread, I guess you could say. But starting off, we have a couple of series jars, a science fiction fantasy award jar, and then 4 prompts, which were blue, white, or gray on the cover, a neutral cover set in a cold place, and then a cover of planet and stars on it. So as you can see, we did not read too many books out of these 7 prompts. We read The Golden Enclaves, which is the 3rd book in the Skullman series, the 3rd and final book. So we did finish a series this month, which is great. At least we got something accomplished. And I enjoyed the Skullman series. It's a dark academia series, and I love dark academia, and I really enjoyed this series as well. I enjoyed the main character, Elle. And unlike some series, I actually enjoyed every book in the series, which doesn't always happen. But for this series, I did enjoy them all. So these books are set in a world where people can be born with magic. Those who are born with magic start getting tracked down by Maleficaria, kind of like monsters that are attracted to the magic that is housed within the people. And to be able to survive these, the children are sent to the Skullman School, which is kind of in its own dimension, to learn how to fight and survive. So in this school, though, these monsters lurk as well, so it's a very dangerous school, and most people end up not graduating or even surviving the school. But the main character, Elle, happens to have a very strong magic, and that she can use to destroy things. And her powers kind of lean towards the bad magical people, so no one wants to interact with her because they're kind of scared of what she can do. But Elle starts to realize that she needs to make friends to survive, and that's kind of where the story goes from there. It's a 3-book series, a trilogy, and it's the first books that I read by Naomi Novik. I'm definitely looking forward to reading future books by her because I really enjoyed this one. This month, I also read Lamont, which was a book with a neutral cover and the one with the pointy weapon on it. This is a fantasy series that is set in a world where there are fairies, but no one can see them except for certain people. The book follows Deirdre, who one day begins to see these magical creatures, and she ends up being tracked down by the assassins of the Fairy Queen because the Fairy Queen does not want her alive. So it's kind of like this dark fairy fantasy book. The author is pretty well known, though I don't think for this series. I think this was one of her earlier series, but she's written the Raven Cycle and the Scorpio races as well. Overall, I enjoy this book. I think I gave it somewhere between a 3.5 and a 4. It was just one of those books that was a quick read. It's not one that sticks with me. I read it, 2 months ago, and I don't remember a ton about it, other than the main character was being tracked down by fairy assassins, and she also liked to make music, and her best friend gets hurt in the crossfire. Anyway, I think this is book 1 in the series. I also, from what I remember when I was researching the series, I don't think it was ever finished. I think it was supposed to be a trilogy, but only the first 2 books have been finished. So I don't know if I'm going to go on and read the second one or not, knowing that these books were written in the early 2000s and the third book has never come out. It kind of makes me not want to read further on for that reason, especially since the author has written so many series since then. It doesn't seem like she is going to go back and complete this trilogy, but we'll see. If it gets completed, I will probably read it, but if it doesn't, I'm kind of 50-50 on whether I'll read the second book in this series or not. All right, so moving over to the other side, there are 3 books that we completed for these 7 prompts on this side of things. First up is Wayward, which I actually read the majority in April, so you'll see some more of that book in April. Wayward is a very popular book that is set across 3 different timelines and kind of follows witchcraft across 3 different centuries, from the 1600s to 1940s to 2019. I really liked how the author kind of connected these 3 different timelines in the story. I wasn't really sure how that was all going to happen, but I enjoyed how the author did go about doing that. I enjoyed all 3 characters in each setting and how each character was kind of very unique, so it was easy to keep track of who was who, and they each had their own flaws and their own positive things about them. And I liked how independent each of the women characters were in their own timeline. And I liked how the author kind of wrote the plot and laid out the plot. And I felt like in some books, when you're switching between a lot of timelines, it can be very disjointed, but I didn't feel like that with this book. So I definitely enjoyed it. It is one of my 25 books to read in 2025, so I got another one of those checked off, though technically it will belong to April because that's when I read the majority of the book. Next up is Hidden, which is a book I have owned forever but never read. It's a part of a 4-book series by Kendra Elliott, who's known for her kind of mystery thriller romances. And this book follows Lacey, who is a forensic dentist, which I thought was pretty cool. You read books about forensic doctors, forensic pathologists, forensic crime scenes, but I have never read a book where the main character was a forensic dentist, so that was definitely kind of fun. So the book starts out with her getting called to a crime scene where there are bones that have just been discovered, and she gets called to see if she can identify them by her teeth. And it turns out she was able to identify them right on the crime scene, and it happened to be her best friend that had disappeared 9 years ago and was thought to have been murdered by the co-ed slayer. Now, Lacey happens to be the only surviving victim of the co-ed slayer, who is a serial killer who was sent to prison and then ended up passing away in prison. And now she also finds out that people who had testified against the co-ed slayer, which she had done, are now being killed off one by one as well. But the problem, like I said before, is that the co-ed slayer passed away in jail, so now they need to figure out if the person they put in jail was truly the co-ed slayer, or if the actual co-ed slayer is still free and now killing off people once again. And to do this, she has the help of Jack Harper, who is a ex-cop. So, you know, your typical mystery thriller book. You got your ex-cop, you got a forensic dentist. The two of them are attracted to each other as they try to solve the mystery where the female is in danger. I enjoyed the two characters in the book, so it's definitely a series I will be continuing on. I don't really have much else to say about it, because there wasn't, other than her being a forensic dentist, which I thought was cool, there wasn't anything else that really stood out in this book than any other mystery thriller, other than her being a forensic dentist. But I did enjoy the story. And then lastly, I read The Awakening of Ren Crown, which is a fantasy book that sort of reminds me a little bit about The Awakening, the first book in the Zodiac Academy series. First of all, it has Awakening right in the title. Second of all, it follows a pair of twins, Ren and her brother. Her brother ends up dying, and when he dies, magic is awakened in Ren Crown. She is living in, you know, the normal world where she doesn't even know magic exists until her brother dies. Powers are awakened in her, and a man who claims to be from a magic school shows up at her house and tells her that she has been admitted to this magical school and needs to come with him. So very reminiscent, the beginning of the book was to the Zodiac Academy's first book, but then things changed completely. So in the world of Ren Crown, the world is made up of these rings. The first ring is where normal people live. The second ring is where magic is and where the magical university is. So she gets taken to the second ring, only to find out that first off, there's something off about her magic, and second of all, people are now out to get her because of her magic. So it was like I said, I said I like dark academia. I like any magical academia books. This wasn't really a dark academia book, I would say. It was definitely a magical university, though. So I really enjoyed reading it. I enjoyed the main character, Ren Crown, and I am looking forward to the rest of the books in this series. I think it's like a series of 5. So I'm interested to see what else happens. I like the world building in this book, and I liked how Ren Crown got used to her magic in this book, coming from a world where she did not know magic existed to a world where she now is a wielder of magic. So that completes our journal update for the months of January, February, and March. I like how this turned out, and I'm excited to finish it up as the year progresses. So thank you for joining me in this video and listening to me give my recaps on the books I read for the first quarter of the year. The next video coming out after this one will be my June TBR, which is unbelievable that we'll be hitting June and almost halfway through the year. But that will come out next Friday. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. If you want to see future videos by me, including my TBR video that is coming out next month, please hit the subscribe button. Thank you again for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their May. Hope that your TBRs are going well. I think I am halfway through my TBR, so doing pretty good. I'm hopeful that I will be finishing it up by the end of this month, but we'll find that out next week. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!